Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're heading, metaphorically speaking, to a really incredible place, the ancient quarry in Aswan, Egypt, home to that truly fascinating unfinished obelisk.
Yeah, Aswan. It's got such a rich history. It used to be called Sweenet.
Right.
And it wasn't just some quiet town. Its location on the Nile was, well, strategically vital. A key military post, but also a massive center for trade.
So lots of activity, boats coming and going.
Exactly. You can just picture it, boats moving north, south, carrying goods. And they actually levied tolls and customs there. It was a real choke point for commerce on the river.
Interesting. And didn't its location have some other significance too? Something about geography?
Oh, definitely. It's located at almost exactly 24 degrees north latitude. Ancient geographers were fascinated by this.
Why was that so significant?
They believed it was right under the Tropic of Cancer. This meant that supposedly at the summer solstice around noon, vertical objects wouldn't cast any shadow, or, well, barely any shadow.
Wow, and that led to something bigger, didn't it?
It certainly did. That observation was famously used by Eratosthenes way back over 2,000 years ago. He compared the shadow length, or lack thereof, in Aswan with measurements in Alexandria.
And that's how he calculated the Earth's circumference.
That's the story, yes. Pretty amazing how a local observation could lead to such a fundamental piece of knowledge about our planet. It's quite something.
It really is. And for anyone thinking of visiting Aswan today, the climate is... It's intense, right?
Oh, absolutely. Aswan is one of the driest cities anywhere in the world. You get almost no rain year-round. Very, very low humidity.
Which must be part of why these ancient structures are still there for us to see.
Precisely. That extreme dryness has been a great preserver. Which kind of brings us neatly to the main focus of our deep dive today, that unfinished obelisk in its quarry.
Okay.
Our goal here is really to give you a sort of brief but hopefully engaging look at the site, cover its history, what makes it special, some interesting facts, especially if you're maybe planning a trip and want to know more.
Sounds great. So let's dive into the quarry itself. The headliner, obviously, is the unfinished obelisk. Can you paint a picture for us?
Right. Well, imagine this enormous stone. It's a single piece of red granite. It measures about 137 feet long. That's roughly 42 meters.
Just huge. Longer than a blue whale, I read somewhere.
Yeah, something like that. And the weight. It's estimated at over 1,200 tons. That's well over 2.5 million pounds.
Wow. Staggering. The sheer ambition is hard to grasp.
It really is. You stand there and just think about the logistics. How do they even plan to finish it, let alone move it? It's a marvel. It inspires real wonder.
And people have known about it for a long time.
Oh yes, for centuries. But the actual site, the quarry around it, wasn't properly cleared and excavated until the winter of 1922.
So relatively recently in archaeology.
Relatively, yes. The Antiquities Department funded that clearance, and it was crucial work.
Because studying it tells us so much about how they worked stone back then.
Exactly. For anyone visiting, it's like an open-air museum of ancient stoneworking. You can literally see the evidence of their methods right there in the rock.
Like what kind of evidence? Tool marks?
Tool marks, yes. You can see where they use things like copper chisels. Those wouldn't do much on granite alone. More importantly, evidence of pounding with hard dolerite balls, these incredibly tough stone pounders. Examples are documented.
Dolerite. That's a really hard rock, isn't it?
Extremely hard. Harder than the granite itself. They basically bashed away at the granite with these pounders. And you can also see slots where they inserted wedges.
So tell me about the initial process. How did they start separating such a huge block?
Well, one technique you can see evidence for involves removing the rock around and underneath very carefully to essentially free the obelisk, or at least allow the tip to pass as they plan to roll it out. Immense precision needed there.
To avoid cracking the main stone.
Precisely. You make one mistake, and potentially centuries of work, well, maybe not centuries, but a huge amount of work is ruined. And their techniques weren't static either.
They developed over time.
Seems like it. Later on, you see evidence of them cutting long, continuous channels for wedges, rather than just smaller individual slots. Maybe a more efficient method.
Interesting. What else can you learn from the quarry floor?
Well, you find granite that seems weakened, possibly by the use of fire. Setting fires could make the rock more brittle and easier to remove. It looks like this rotted granite was pretty common throughout the quarry.
So they might have used fire alongside the pounding.
Quite possibly. And they were smart about checking the stone
So
quality
this
first.
is what they tell you.
There are signs of what look
They
like
used
test
to,
shafts, like they were probing deep down to make sure the granite was good before starting the massive
Apparently
job
this is what they
of
used
cutting
to.
out an obelisk.
Like taking core samples today, sort of?
This
Kinda,
is,
yeah. An ancient
dolerite or
version of
diorite.
quality control.
Now, there's also that
This is
famous
granite, but
trench
they just
around the
grind that.
obelisk. What's the story there?
Ah, the
Yeah.
trench. That's a classic example of their quarrying approach. It was dug specifically to isolate the obelisk, to separate it from the bedrock on its sides.
And it's quite deep, I imagine.
It is. And if you look at the sheer rock face above the obelisk, there's some thinking that another monument might have been removed from there even earlier.
Really? Any proof?
Not definitive proof, but the shape suggests it. And what's really cool is that on that same rock face, archaeologists found records left by the workers.
Records? Like what?
Short inscriptions, probably marking out the work done by different shifts or gangs. It gives us a tiny peek into how they organized this massive labor force.
That's incredible shift work thousands of years ago. Now, you mentioned wedges before. How important were they?
Oh, crucial, especially for splitting off these huge blocks. Using wedges was likely much faster than relying solely on pounding or fire for the final separation.
And you find evidence of these wedges.
Thousands of them. Well, the slots for them, mainly. All over the quarries. Usually driven in from the top, downwards, to split the rock.
What were the wedges made of? Metal? Wood?
Probably both. But there are some absolutely enormous wedge slots visible, particularly higher up. It's led to speculation they might have used large
No
wooden
idea.
wedges.
Wooden
What do you think
wedge.
it is?
How would that work on granite?
The idea is to hammer them in dry, then soak them with
Water well?
water.
Yeah, because I heard
The
one of
wood
the
expands
workers
with
there telling
incredible
somebody
force.
else.
And what was it used for?
Enough, perhaps, to split even granite. It's theory, anyway.
They dug it by
So they cut
dug
the
it by
trench,
hand.
used pounders,
Supposedly?
fire,
Supposedly.
drove in wedges. What came next in shaping the obelisk itself?
So of all the
Before
places
they
where
got to
you
the
can get a
final
well,
smoothing
this is
and
where they're gonna.
polishing, They seem to have sunk a series of squarish pits or holes around the perimeter of the obelisk's shape.
What was the purpose of those pits?
Probably part of the process of roughing out the shape and getting access to work on the sides more easily. You can see these pits quite clearly before the trench.
And how did the work progress? Was it all done at the same speed?
Interestingly, it seems the work on sinking these pits might have gone a bit slower than digging the main trench. Perhaps it required more careful, detailed work as they got closer to the obelisk's final dimensions.
It just conjures images of hundreds, maybe thousands of people working away in the heat. Did they leave any other marks behind, little signs of the individuals?
They did, actually. There were short inscriptions found, often in red paint. These probably mark the progress
wow.
of different work shifts, as we mentioned.
Like tally marks, almost.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly, most are very faint now, hard to read. But some from a specific section, like Division 8, were a bit clearer.
You just
and
scoop
dark.
stuff out.
Any other writing found?
Yes. There's a trace of a hieratic inscription. That's the more cursive script they use for everyday stuff found on the upper quarry face. It was in black paint, 2 lines, had a date and a number, but interestingly, no king's name attached.
Curious. So, maybe not a royal commission, or the name just faded?
Hard to say for sure. It's a little mystery.
It sounds like they were quite meticulous with marking things out.
Oh, definitely. There are also black lines visible on that upper face that clearly indicate the intended taper for a smaller obelisk, a specific ratio, 1 in 17.5. They even mark these lines off in ancient Egyptian feet with little vertical ticks.
So precise engineering drawings right there on the rock face.
Pretty much. And there's a red symbol, the Nefer sign, found under an eye symbol after one of the divisions. In other quarries, that sign often seems to be
Really?
ground level.
Like a benchmark.
Okay.
Possibly, yeah. And one more little snippet at the west end.
So of
of
all
the
the
main
places
ridge,
where you can get a
there's
well,
short
this is where they're gonna.
paint that just says the workout. But the name is missing, or it was never added.
Intriguing, like someone started to sign their work.
Maybe. And finally, a fragment of pottery, like a shard of pot, was found during the ruins. It had part of a letter written on it mentioning beating the stone.
Beating the stone.
Yeah, which almost certainly refers to that process of pounding the granite away with a hard dolerite balls mechanically. A direct reference to the work itself.
Hearing all these details, it really hammers home the sheer scale of the effort, the human power, the time.
It absolutely does. Studying the unfinished obelisk right there in the quarry makes you appreciate the immense labor, the incredible amount of time invested, and also, frankly, the failures this gigantic obelisk cracked before it was even freed.
A testament to the challenges they faced.
Exactly. And it throws our modern capabilities into perspective, too. Even today, moving obelisks much smaller than this unfinished one, say, around 300 tons, is a major engineering challenge requiring complex equipment.
Right.
Yet the ancient Egyptians somehow managed to quarry, transport, and erect obelisks weighing well over 500 tons, maybe even up to 800 tons or more. And they left us frustratingly few detailed how-to guides.
Although, didn't Queen Hatshepsut leave some record about her obelisk?
Yes. That's a key piece of evidence. There's a record mentioning that quarrying her famous obelisks at Karnak took 7 months of work in the mountain.
7 months, just for the quarrying.
Just for the quarrying of 2 large, but not the largest ever obelisks. It gives you a sense of the time scale involved.
So while there are official explanations, theories about ramps, rollers, manpower, the sheer scale still leaves room for wonder, maybe even skepticism.
I'd say so. Many people look at the evidence, look at the size, the precision, the challenges, and find the standard explanations, well, maybe a bit too simple, or perhaps just incomplete. The unfinished obelisk remains this incredible, tangible mystery sitting right there in the ground.
It definitely sounds like a must-see. So if our listeners are inspired to go, what else is there to explore in and around Aswan?
Oh, Aswan is a fantastic base. Besides the quarry, the Philae Temple complex is absolutely essential. It's the beautiful temple complex dedicated to Isis that was famously moved piece by piece to save it from the rising waters of Lake Ness.
Wow, what's the access like for Philae?
You take a shore boat ride to the island. Basic entry tickets to the main temple area are usually around $25, give or take. And it's worth knowing that the Isis temple sometimes hosts things like music performances or lectures too. A really atmospheric setting for cultural events.
Any other nearby highlights we should consider?
Definitely. The sources we often look at also mention places like Abu Simbel, those incredible temples built by Ramesses II, though that's a separate trip, usually by
Look
plane.
at all the scoop marks here.
Right, Abu Simbel is further south.
It is. But closer to Aswan itself, there's Elephantine Island right in the Nile, full of history, ruins, and a great museum. And across on the west bank, you have the tombs of the nobles cut into the cliffs. They offer a different perspective on ancient life and burial practices compared to the royal tombs elsewhere.
So, plenty to combine with a visit to the quarry for a really rich trip.
Supposedly they were just
Aswan offers a fantastic mix of monumental sites, local culture,
doing
and
that.
stunning Nile scenery.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive into the unfinished obelisk and its quarry. It's clearly a place that speaks volumes about ancient Egyptian ingenuity, ambition, and maybe even their limits. It still leaves you with so many questions.
It really does. And perhaps that's the perfect thought to leave you, the listener, with. When you consider the colossal scale of this stone, the visible tool marks, the evidence of organized labor, the crack that stopped it all, what aspect of the unfinished obelisk, or ancient Egyptian stoneworking in general, really stays with you? What part makes you pause and just wonder about the capabilities, the mindset, the sheer audacity of the civilization that attempted such things? It really invites you to think about the why and the how, doesn't it?